Hello everyone, welcome back. This is going to be tips number 7, 8, and 9 of the 16.5 tips and fundamentals to sweep pick. So let's not waste any time here. Tip number 7 was going to be to use the triplet and rest method to improve the flow in your right hand. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? Triplet, and then rest the pick on the next string. So if you do this with the shape that we're holding on to, it doesn't really have much to do with the left hand. This is just a right hand exercise. So if you're going downwards, down, up, down, rest, hence the name triplet and rest, down, 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 rest on the next string, and down, down, down. So when you're moving upwards, it's the same thing. It's still a triplet, except that it's up, down, up, and then rest it on the next string over. Up, down, up, and rest it on the next string over. Next, tip number 8, we have shadow sweeping, which is exactly what it sounds like. No need for the right hand, it's similar to tip number 3, but in this case, you're trying to do the full sweep while you are executing all of the notes with just the left hand. So basically they're all hammer-ons, but what this does is it teaches you to have better muscle memory and better control, because it does feel a little bit different just playing it with your left hand as opposed to trying to sweep with both your left and right hands coordinated. But again, what this does is it teaches your left hand to already know the positions so that it can be easier to integrate with the right picking hand. And then lastly, for tip number 9, we have what I can only explain as crafting the final product out of chunks you can play well. Maybe you can play this really well, but the rest doesn't flow as well. So what you need to do is craft a couple of chunks that would bring the entire sweep together. So if you can do this, what you need to do is craft something else that'll complete the sweep, and then just play them in succession. So eventually you've played them enough times that they'll start to flow together. Oh, and before I move on to the minor shape, the fundamental that I want y'all to keep in mind for this video is to warm up about 30 minutes to an hour before doing this practice. That way that once you've done the warm-ups that you need to do, you'll be at peak playing capacity, and that way you'll be able to get the most out of attempting these training tips. So remember, warm up 30 minutes to an hour before playing, so that way you can have a better quality of practice, because you'll already be at your best before you even start playing. So for the minor shape, same thing. So tip number 7 was going to be to use the triplet and rest method, but I've already explained that. So maybe you could get a little bit more out of it by trying to do this over the minor chord that this has inscribed in it. So the trick to this is, again, make sure that you only do the 3 at a time, down, up, down, and then rest your pick on the next one. And the way you progress with this is to do the first triplet and then go past the next string afterwards. So number 8 was going to be to do the shadow sweeping that I went over before. So pretty self-explanatory. Again, it's for your muscle memory. Number 9 was to craft the final sweeping pattern out of the chunks that you can play well. So maybe, because of tip number 1, you can play that really well, but maybe you have trouble completing everything else because of the movements. So if you can play these 3 and these 3, you basically have the entire sweep. So play those 2 in sequence, or however many chunks. Maybe they're 2-note chunks, And pick them if you have to. Whatever's easiest for you, but the tip here, the important thing here, is that you are using whatever's easiest for you, whatever chunks that you can perform well to work in your favor. And now for the diminished shape. Oh, and again, like I said before, the rest of the tips and tricks are in the link in the description below, and there's also a link there for guitar tricks if you're interested in that. And if you're interested in learning more, that was one of the ways that I was able to at least accelerate my sweep picking progress. Otherwise, it would have taken a lot longer. So anyway, diminished shape. Let's not waste any time here. Triplet and rest method. You already learned this. It's a right hand picking technique. It's not dependent on the shape, but again, just a really brief overview of it would just be to, for example, if you're starting out on the one, up, down, up, and then rest it in the upstroke ready position on the next string, up, down, up, and then upstroke ready, up, down, up. So to link these together and to be more fluid as you're changing strings, try this, where you do up, down, up, up. Then eventually, when you've done them enough, when you've done just the triplets and rest, and when you've done the triplets and gone past, you'll be better equipped at doing the entire triplet and rest cycle. Shadow sweeping for the diminished shape is going to sound like this. And again, I'm only using my index, middle, and ring fingers. It'll sound like this. Again, if it's too quick for you, just slow down. Go back to the first tip. And I think the second tip to gradually take the pressure off. So just keep that in mind. Shadow sweeping helps with learning and consolidating the sweep in your left hand before you even begin to include into the right hand. So overall, it'll just make the whole learning process smoother if you practice this. And lastly, tip number 9 was to craft the final sweeping pattern out of chunks you can play well. Maybe you can play these first 3 notes, and you can play the sweep in reverse, the first 3 notes. You know, there's still probably going to be a couple of gaps. So what you want to do is locate where they are. So you can do all of those notes correctly. So then after that, the follow would be 4 and 5, which is only one empty note away from your preset chunk that you already knew how to play well. So then also start growing the speed and quality of the chunks that you have, so that eventually they start to sound less like 2 distinct chunks and more like one smooth, cohesive sweep. So thanks everybody for sticking around this far. Just one more video left in the 3-string series. We're going to explain tips number 10, 11, and 12, one of the fundamentals. Oh, and the half fundamental that I also have for y'all. So stay tuned, and I'll see y'all in the next video.